Politics forces its way into the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Those on the left call him a white supremacist, while those on the right call him a hero. Things might not be so black and white. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Just so you know, YouTube loves to demonetize controversial videos, like this one. We can't afford to keep making America Uncovered without your support. All it takes is as little as $1 per episode on the crowdfunding website Patreon. Visit patreon.com/AmericaUncovered. Link is in the description below. Last August, in the wake of nationwide protests against police brutality and the killing of George Floyd, protests broke out in Kenosha, Wisconsin. That was after the Kenosha police shot and seriously injured Jacob Blake, a black man. At night, the protests turned violent, with people setting fire to cars and buildings, looting businesses, and rioting. Upon seeing the rioting on social media, then 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse left his home in Antioch, Illinois, and headed to Kenosha, about a half-hour drive away. Rittenhouse joined up with other armed civilians with first aid supplies and a semi-automatic rifle. The gun was a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 that he got from a friend. Before things got violent, Rittenhouse said this.
So what's up?
So people are getting injured, and our job is to protect this business, and part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle, because I need to protect myself, obviously. But I also have my med kit.
But later that evening, he shot 3 men. 2 died, and 1 was injured. After the incident, Rittenhouse surrendered himself to the police. His trial began earlier this month. Prosecutors started out pushing for 7 criminal charges against Rittenhouse, including first-degree intentional homicide. The 6th and 7th charges were later dismissed by the judge. The 4th charge, first-degree intentional homicide, carries a mandatory life sentence. Rittenhouse's lawyers are arguing all the shootings were in self-defense. Based on the evidence and testimony so far, it does look like all the men killed and injured by Rittenhouse attacked first. A reporter who witnessed the incident testified that Joseph Rosenbaum had charged at Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse testified that Rosenbaum had tried to grab his gun. After Rittenhouse shot Rosenbaum, a crowd started chasing him, including Anthony Huber and Gage Grosskreutz. Huber struck Rittenhouse in the neck with his skateboard. Someone also hit Rittenhouse with a rock, and Rittenhouse fell. Huber struck him in the neck again, and Rittenhouse testified that Huber also tried to grab his gun. That's when Rittenhouse shot Huber. In court, Grosskreutz admitted he pointed a pistol towards Rittenhouse, though he claims that he didn't point it intentionally or intended to harm the teen.
But on cross-examination, the defense went through the video again, at times second by second.
When you were standing 3 to 5 feet from him with your arms up in the air, he never fired, right?
Correct.
It wasn't until you pointed your gun at him, advanced on him, with your gun, now your hands down, pointed at him, that he fired, right?
Correct.
So Grosskreutz says he never intended to hurt Rittenhouse, he just advanced on him with a gun. Makes total sense, which is why the prosecutor literally facepalmed after Grosskreitz's testimony. As of this recording, there hasn't been a verdict. But there's another trial that Rittenhouse has been facing. Trial by media. I'll explain more after the break. Welcome back, unless this video got demonetized and all you saw was a black screen. So everyone seems to be talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. And both the left and right-wing media are framing this case in radically different ways. Back in 2020, many on the left depicted Rittenhouse as the enemy, radicalized by Trumpism.
Kyle Rittenhouse is the enemy.
You see the 17-year-old who was radicalized by Trumpism.
The U.S. Congresswoman called him a domestic terrorist. Another called him a white supremacist and domestic terrorist. This article referred to him as MAGA's favorite killer. Rittenhouse has been grouped together with white supremacists by many in the media and politicians. Things have only escalated a year later in 2021. One U.S. congressman, a Democrat, called for him to be locked away for good. Left-leaning media has been even nastier.
Two thoughts. One, What kind of idiot 17-year-old gets a giant gun and goes to a riot? The good news for Kyle Rittenhouse is that he's not on trial for being an idiot. He's on trial for homicide.
Right. Some on the left want to make an example out of Rittenhouse. One reporter, in a now deleted tweet, even joked about Rittenhouse being prison raped. And others have used this to bash all conservatives as bloodthirsty advocates for murder.
I mean, he went to go shoot black people. They're not victims. Victims? No. Kyle Rittenhouse murdered these people, and the right wing started like a GoFundMe page or whatever and raised millions for him. They're like, oh, you went to go kill black people, and then at that Black Lives Matter protest, you murdered a couple of people. Bravo! Way to go, murderer!
Now, there isn't much evidence concretely proving that Rittenhouse is a white supremacist. Some might make that connection because he's a pro-police, pro-Trump white gunman in a Black Lives Matter protest. Some might also connect him with the Kenosha Guard, a now deactivated Facebook group that has been accused of being a white supremacist vigilante group. But Facebook hasn't found any connection between Rittenhouse and the Kenosha Guard. Critics point out that white supremacist groups have glorified Rittenhouse. And Rittenhouse was seen with a group of Proud Boys in January this year. But according to Rittenhouse's defense attorney, there's no information Rittenhouse knew who the Proud Boys members at the bar were. In fact, the progressive media narrative around Rittenhouse over the past year has been so extreme that many liberals have expressed shock at learning what actually happened through watching the live stream trial. Some assumed Rittenhouse had shot black protesters and were surprised to learn all 3 people he shot were white. Others said they had been living in a progressive bubble. Billionaire hedge fund manager Bill Ackman tweeted that watching the trial left him with a materially different view of the case compared to all the media reports and opinion pieces he'd read. He says he now views Rittenhouse as a civic-minded patriot, and that media and political bias are dividing our country and destroying lives. And guess what? After tweeting that, he got contacted by a reporter asking if his Twitter account had been hacked, because according to Ackman, the reporter couldn't conceive of the idea that I could believe that Kyle is innocent because I am not a right-winger. But that doesn't mean conservative media aren't using the Rittenhouse case to push their own political agendas. More after the break. Welcome back. The liberal media narrative painted Rittenhouse as a white supremacist who went to a Black Lives Matter protest to shoot black people. That sounds pretty bad. But the conservative narrative is at the opposite extreme. To them, Rittenhouse is a hero.
He's more than merely innocent. He's more than that. I think he's a hero. But where I come from, putting yourself in harm's way in order to defend innocent people and protect property is heroic.
He did the right thing. He did what the government should have done, which was to make sure these dirtbags, these violent, disgusting dirtbags, weren't roaming the streets.
Other right-wing commentators and politicians emphasized Rittenhouse was just a child.
That's a kid who was overcome with emotion. And again, you're talking about a kid who was there to put out fires, to provide medical assistance, who was there because he saw a town on fire.
What's it coming to in these liberal cities when teenagers have to go out there to try to provide aid to other people who are getting injured by these rioters?
So if Rittenhouse is a good Samaritan child hero, who were the people he shot? A sex offender, a domestic abuser, and an armed communist. I think it's time for an America Uncovered mental health break. Here's a dog holding flowers on a beach. I'm feeling mildly better. So the way the right is framing the Rittenhouse case ultimately goes back to a way to attack all Democrats. Here's Tucker Carlson.
Kyle Rittenhouse went to Kenosha to clean up the filth left by the rioting Biden voters.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a fun one, used the Rittenhouse case to attack the manhood of politically correct pundits. But is it possible the truth is somewhere in between the left and right narratives? It seems like Rittenhouse genuinely went to Kenosha with a desire to help. There's images of him cleaning graffiti earlier in the day. How do you go from cleaning graffiti to shooting 3 people? Like I said earlier, the protests in Kenosha may have started out peacefully, but things turned violent, especially at night. As we know from Grosskreutz testimony, at least some of the protesters were armed. I can see why Rittenhouse might have thought it was prudent to arm himself. But if he hadn't been out on the streets at night with a gun, this whole thing would never have happened. And now, Rittenhouse is caught in the middle of the left-right culture wars, where people's opinions of whether he's guilty or innocent are based less on the evidence presented in court and more on other political issues, like racial justice and gun laws. And political biases in the media are heavily influencing their coverage. So if you want to call Rittenhouse a good guy or a bad guy, fine. But I recommend you wait to do it until after watching the trial yourself. So what do you think? Leave your comments below. And if you like this show, please know we could not do it without direct support from viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/AmericaUncovered and contribute $1 or more per episode to help us keep the show going. So click the link below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.